Naija Newspaper Review.
Good morning and you're welcome once again to the Naija Newspaper Review. I am Omonigho and I'll be taking you through the various sub-stories of Nigeria's newspaper here on City Mirror TV. Now, first on our table we have the Nation newspapers, and it says Boko Haram fighters who killed many sentenced to death. Tinubu mourns historic fallen soldiers after attack. 2.2 million candidates to sit for 2026 UTME April 16. UBA's widers youth empowerment with gratitude programming on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. School City inaugurated in Lagos. Mark-led ADC returns to court after threats. Protests. Fashion seeks recognition. Balagumbe leads counter protests. The National Working Committee (NWC) of the African Democratic Congress (ADC) has asked a court to void the withdrawal of its recognition by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). On April 1st, the commission removed the names of the national chairman David Mark and the national secretary and others from its website following a court of appeal. In a motion on notice, Mark is praying the Federal High Court in Abuja for an order of mandatory induction, directing INEC to restore recognition to all members of the National Working Committee, and is also seeking an order of mandatory induction, setting aside the removal of the party's officers' names from INEC's portals and website, as well as the decision not to attend or monitor the applicant's congress or convention pending the hearing and determination of the suit. More stories in page 2 of the Nation newspapers. ExxonMobil moors $8 billion project in Owowo. Federal government panel to review $200 billion gas power rain project proposal on page 2. The proposal project is designed to link major economic corridors including Lagos, Abuja, Kaduna and Kano with Port Harcourt with high-speed trains, while also boosting energy supply through integrated gas and power infrastructure. The government believes the initiative, if viable, could transform transportation, enhance energy security, stimulate industrial growth and strengthen national integration. And now on to the Guardian newspaper. NNPC, NUPRC, oil major insists on 3 million barrel per day target, seek lower production costs on the news page 3. Judge alleged plots by APC, INEC to undermine democracy, won against one-party state. ADC, Abedeji leads protest to INEC, demands ballast recognition. Restate petrol import license to avert inflation spike. World Bank urges Nigeria on the business page 18 of the Guardian newspaper. Lagos judiciary leverages tax to reduce 64% of 80,812 inmates awaiting trials. Fresh terror attacks, few consign, U.S. response despite official reassurance. Nigeria future, age-long conflict worries Obasanjo. Ohana says 6 canoes release, bans Eziogbu title outside Igbo land. And the major story on the front page of the Guardian newspaper says service charge, how government squeezes masses to fund bureaucracy inefficiency. Under the current administration, Nigeria has seen a strategic shift towards revenue harvesting, resulting in a sharp upward revision of fees for essential government service like passports, driver's license, and education, transforming basic entitlements into significant financial burdens for citizens. And that's on the Guardian's front page of the Guardian newspaper. Moving on to the Vanguard newspapers, it says World Bank World Bank downgrades Nigeria's 2026 economic growth to 4.1, and you can get that on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. ADC sues INEC demands recognition of Mark Aregbesola. Army general feared killed in Boko Haram attack on Borno community. U.S. orders non-emergency staff to leave Abuja embassies with their families as well. Special reports. Cutthroat rent hike worsening Nigeria's housing crisis. How landlords, estate agents exploit hopeless tenants with arbitrary rent fees. Why rents are skyrocketing. What Nigeria must do. Low incomes, high building costs, weak mortgage system. Others fingered. 550,000 housing units needed yearly to overcome 15 million deficits in 10 years. Tolu Schools Complex Commission. You have the pictures. Middle East crisis. Calls grow for inclusion of Lebanon in peace deal on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. Until we come together, nobody will fix Nigeria for us, says Obasanjo. And that's it on the Guardian newspaper, and we'll be moving on to the Nigeria Tribune. And it says petrol price may hit 2,000 naira per litre, TUC wants federal government to subsidize crude, fast-track CNG infrastructure. Should this actually be subsidized? It's a question for you Nigerians to answer. And you can get that on page 13. On page 15 of the Tribune newspaper. Leadership crisis. David Mark-led ADC praise calls to reverse INEC decision. Dark day in Borno. Brigadier General orders killed in Benishek military base attack. Troops neutralize scores of insurgents. Tinubu mourns with families. Describes fallen soldiers as unforgettable heroes. Federal government pushes back as U.S. orders embassy employees, families to leave Abuja. Southern Middle Belt leaders. Federal government too soft on terrorists. Calls for abolitions of operations, open corridor. I extend my condolences to the family of our gallant soldiers, led by Brigadier General Worsening, Omonigho, who made the ultimate sacrifice in the defense of our country today in Borno State. The government will never forget their sacrifices. Their sacrifices will not be in vain because of the courage and dedication of our troops on the front line. Our resolve to defeat terrorism and all forms of violence across Nigeria is stronger than ever, says President Bola Tinubu to the fallen heroes in Borno State. NADDC Sun launched VECAP to strengthen vehicle safety industry standards. You can get that on page 12 of the Tribune newspaper. UBA drives youth empowerment with graduate programming. Equip over 700 young professionals on page 16. Nigeria calls on UN to promote fair hydrogen economy. You get that on page 21 of the Tribune newspaper. And that's it on the Tribune newspaper. Moving on to the Daily Trust newspapers, and the top story says terrorist kills Nigeria 17 soldiers in Borno. Brigadier General Worsening Omonigho and 17 soldiers paid the supreme price early Thursday in coordinated attacks by suspected members of the Islamic State of West African Province, ISWAP, or military formation in Benishek's Kaga local government area, as well as Ngadu and Puka town in the Gwaza local government area of Borno State. Another headline says, again Tinubu absent as Lagos Projects Commission. Robbers cut off teachers' hands in Kano. 2027. Don't truncate democracy. Ariwa think tank. CSOs cautions oppositions. And that's it on the Daily Trust newspaper, with the front headline giving us the news on the general who was killed at the attack by terrorists in their base. Sorry. And from the Punch, FG insists Nigeria states as US pulls embassy officials. Major headlines say fresh blows for ADC as state congresses stalls. Court halts Adamawa Congress, Anambra, Ondo, Zamfara put on hold. Kaduna Ocean factions pull out, mixed outcomes in Kebbi, Sokoto, Plateau. ADC asks Abuja court to void INEC decision on Mark Aregbesola. You get that on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Borno attack, Army General terrorist killed, Tinubu mourns on page 7. Nigeria poverty hit 63% despite easing inflation, says World Bank. Power outage, insecurity, top businesses challenge, CBN surveil. I get that on page 43 of the Punch newspaper, and that's it from the Punch. And moving on to the Leadership newspaper, which will be the last we'll be taking for today. It says Arsenal reunites title charge after European boasts as Premier League returns. You can get that on page 4 of the Leadership newspaper. Power generation dropped by 295 megawatt in March, NERC. Tinubu more soldiers kills in battle with Boko Harams on page 4. Casino to sponsor 1,000 couples wedding. USOP settles 32 billion naira pension backlog, vows full clearance on page 22 of the Leadership newspaper. Lassa fever. Nigeria records 663 cases, 167 deaths in 3 months. And get that in page 20. Insecurity. Unijust VC confirms 2 students killed and 3 injured. More details of these on page 20 of the Leadership newspaper. And the front page says, and the major headline says ADC crisis. David Mark approaches courts, seek reversal of INEC's decision. 11 Boko Haram members jailed for 40 to 60 years. And that bring us to an end of the Niger newspaper review here on City Mirror TV. I'm Omonigho, and I say thank you for watching.
NaijaNewspaper Review.